let's move on to some gaming news. Richard, this news today, not surprising, but it's still like right in the chest. Like it kind of hurt. It kind of hurt, even though it wasn't surprising at all.
Yeah.
Today, we have to play taps, lower the flags to half mast because E3 is dead and it's never coming back.
Hmm. Well,
Like, this is E3. It started in the mid 90s. It is something that started when I was a kid really
mhm.
getting into video games. I mean, I was like 15 or something like that. Um, I was reading video game magazines and, always looked forward to hearing the latest news about E3. It was the place where all of the major video game announcements happened for decades,
Right.
and
But
it's been
it
dying.
hasn't been,
Right.
even when it's been held, it hasn't been the place where all the major announcements happen anymore.
No, it hasn't. And that I think is the biggest problem and the thing that really led to its death. So I'm going to blame PlayStation because that's what I like to do. No, it's with my green lighting behind me to show that I'm an Xbox. No, that's actually because it's Christmas lighting to match Richards. But Sony's partly to blame, Nintendo's partly to blame, but even blame is probably not actually the fair way to describe what happened here. Nintendo and Sony and many of the other players following in their same direction found that, oh, look at, like, imagine this. We can have our own announcements whenever we want, not on some arbitrary media schedule. And we can have the content that we want to show ready. And I mean, I'm sure they're still rushing people to get things ready for their own schedule, but they get to choose the time and they get to dominate the news cycle. They don't have to fight to try to win E3 if they have their own event in May. So I understand why Nintendo pulled out, why Sony pulled out, and why, in terms of show floor appearance, even a lot of major publishers all pulled out over the last few years.
Yeah.
So it was still an important time. There were still other video game things happening, all to coincide with E3 to try and get their news in while the rest of media is focused on the spectacle of E3, just like CES. Apple doesn't show up at CES. Lots of big companies don't, but there's still a lot of things that happen even outside of CES, but at the same time, because they know that's when the world will have its eyes focused on the consumer electronics space. Same thing with video games. We've also talked in the past about the benefits to the industry itself. It's also a networking event for the industry. It allows small studios to talk to publishers. It allows small media outlets to talk to game developers and get a foot in the door. It's very similar to what CES offered us as the DMZ. We were a small site. We're still a small
Right.
site if we're being honest, but CES gives us that ability as small grassroots media to get our foot in the door and talk with the big companies when they'll actually meet with us, and to help you get your own career started. So to see an event like this go by the wayside, I think it's unfortunate. I'm sad. I'm sad I never got to go. I had always thought about, maybe it would be really fun to go. I'm sure it would be insane and exhausting the way that CES is, but now I'll never actually know because it's gone and there's not really an equivalent uh, thing to replace It's basically been replaced by individual publishers and major console makers. They just release their own events streaming online. They don't really do in person events anymore. So The only thing that's close is the Game Developers Conference, which is far more focused on game developers. So there's some news that comes out of GDC, but it's definitely not the same thing. A lot of people have also said, why do we need E3 when we've got the Game Awards? Uh, I'll save my rant about the Game Awards for the end of the show. I don't think that's the best way to replace E3 either. So it's not surprising. E3 was canceled in 2020 because of the pandemic. They went digital in 2021, did it really poorly, had talked about doing a live or hybrid event in 22. They didn't. They couldn't figure it out. They canceled it. They canceled it this year too for similar reasons. And because they couldn't get buy in from the rest of the industry, the writing has been on the wall that E3 was going to die. I mean, we probably should have said when they canceled 2023 E3 that E3 is in hospice care at that point. Like, we've all known this was coming. I think maybe the best thing about this is that they canceled it early enough that it gives the rest of the industry time to figure out what they're going to do in 2024.
Well, right.
Because, there's Jeff Keighley puts on a big summer event that's timed with E3 also. Does he move that? Like the whole industry gets to really potentially dictate what happens with this giant void left by E3 not existing anymore.
Yeah, I think I'm most interested in seeing what comes in to fill the space. And you made the comparison to CES, and I'm not entirely convinced that that's equivalent because despite all of the soothsayers who've been predicting the demise of CES every single year for the last decade, it isn't happening. See, and we saw good numbers last year. The numbers look like they're going to be good again this year. Vendors are definitely going back. People are going back to conferences. And that was the other thing. People are like, all right, conferences are dead. That's not going to happen. No, people want to get together. People want
Right.
to meet in person and talk to other humans and do business deals and network because that's what these shows offer. And I know I'm a broken record about this, but I do think something will fill this space. And I'm, even though I'm not a gamer, certainly interested in seeing how the industry responds to this and what ends up happening instead.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, one